I have been married for 3 years to a kind husband. We were very close, but we didn't have any children yet. We were both looking forward to the day we would have kids until the accident happened. Please listen to this unbelievable story. My husband was kind to everyone, not just me. My parents loved him too. I have a sister who is very focused on her career, and my husband got along with her as well. Suddenly, my husband's work got really busy. He started coming home late and even working on his days off. He was put in charge of a team and was always on his phone, talking to his team members. Looking back, people might have thought, isn't that suspicious? But I didn't suspect anything. I just worried about his health. Then my sister, who lived alone, got a new job and needed to move. She wanted to buy new furniture, so I planned to take her shopping in my car. On the day we planned to go shopping, which was a Saturday, I got called into work by my boss. This was the only day off for my sister. As I thought about what to do, I realized that my husband also had the day off. My husband had been busy with work lately, but I decided to ask him to take my place. Seeing the trouble I was in, he agreed and said, "It's a bit awkward to go out with your sister alone, but it's fine. My car is being repaired, so can I borrow yours?" I was grateful for his help and went to my office to deal with the problem there. It was the first time my husband and my sister went out alone together. I wondered if they were doing well and if they had found the right furniture. When I finished handling the issue at work, it was already dark. I took out my cell phone to call my husband and sister for dinner. That's when I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, am I speaking to John's family member?" a stranger asked. "Yes, I'm his wife," I replied. "This is the police. Your husband has been in an accident." The man who identified himself as a police officer informed me. He told me that the car my husband was driving had been in an accident and that both he and his female passenger were unconscious. I don't remember exactly what I did when I heard the news, but I rushed to the hospital. At the emergency reception, I gave them my name and was taken to the ICU. Through the glass window, I could see my husband connected to various tubes and wrapped in bandages. I was very worried about what would happen to him. My mother, who lived far away, arrived later, and we spent a worried night together. During this time, the police told us more about the accident. They said John had been driving on a road with clear visibility when a car ran a red light and hit him. The other driver was seriously injured and was also being treated at the same hospital. However, the driver said that John's car had been moving strangely before the accident. The police were investigating whether my husband had fallen asleep at the wheel. Within a few days, my husband and sister regained consciousness, and the doctors did some tests. My mother and I were called in to hear the results. The doctors told us that although they would survive, they would likely have some kind of disability. Despite this, my mother and I were happy they were alive and hoped they would improve with rehabilitation. We didn't tell them about the possible disabilities. My mother and I only shared positive news and took care of them. My mother looked after my sister, and I took care of my husband. At first, my husband was in shock from the accident and was feeling unwell. He was also worried about the trouble he had caused for me, my mother, and my sister. But as time went by, my husband, who had always been kind to me, started to change. He became frustrated with his leg that didn't move easily, the hospital treatment, and the fact that he had to quit his job. All of this seemed to make him very irritable. Even though he couldn't control his frustration, I still went to the hospital every day because I understood how he felt and wanted to support him. One day, a police detective visited me at the hospital. He explained that they had discovered something about the accident. It appeared that there had been a brake oil leak in my car, which was involved in the crash. This issue could have led to an accident at any time, possibly explaining why the car behaved strangely before the crash. The woman who collided with us was also in bad condition. Her mother came to apologize, and it was the first time I met her. After this, I noticed my husband's outburst towards me increased. He resented my ability to move freely while he was immobile. He also seemed irritated when I could only visit briefly due to my work commitments. He began giving me orders and directing his frustrations at me if I didn't meet his expectations. He threw things and complained about his hospital room, even objecting when I went out to get my own lunch. His demands became more unreasonable over time. I sympathized with his situation, but I had to work to support us financially and handle numerous responsibilities like liaising with the police and managing hospital communications. I barely had time to catch my breath. My husband's behavior became increasingly intolerable and I felt trapped. My sister seemed to be struggling similarly, and my mother grew more exhausted by the day. I heard that my sister's demands on our mother, who wasn't employed, were becoming overwhelming as well. When I couldn't make it to the hospital, both my husband and sister seemed to have learned about the possibility of remaining paralyzed despite rehabilitation. Then there was the revelation about my car's brake oil leak. My sister said, "Hey, I heard your car was leaking oil. You were responsible for maintaining it. Now I can't work or recover properly because of this. Mom seems upset, and your husband is in the same situation. You're now responsible for caring for both of us for the rest of your life." My sister's accusations caught me off guard. I called my mother, who explained that my sister had been struggling mentally for a while. She also mentioned being too tired to go to the hospital. Despite this, I remained worried about my husband and went to see him at the hospital. When I didn't find him in his room, I discovered him with my sister in the common area. Visiting hours were almost over, and they were sitting together alone in the otherwise empty room. "Hey, I heard that if you had just taken the car in for inspection, none of this would have happened," my husband said, glaring at me. "Yeah, but you're the reason why your sister and I are in this mess," he continued. "The insurance will cover it, and now you're stuck taking care of us for the rest of our lives. Don't forget that." His words hit me hard, and something inside me snapped. "Since when did you two get so close?" I asked sharply. "What do you mean?" he replied defensively. "You don't visit that often, and your mom texted your sister to come over since we can't leave here, and we can't walk. What's wrong with me talking to your sister?" It felt like my husband and sister were teaming up against me. "Sure," I retorted sarcastically. "You guys hadn't seen each other for ages before the accident, right?" "What are you talking about? I'm talking about you taking care of us." "You know that," my husband said, brushing off my question. My sister didn't even look at me but nodded along when my husband said that I would be caring for them both for the rest of their lives. I didn't expect a response, but I continued speaking, hoping they might understand my feelings. "I wonder if the person who hit your car is recovering now," I said. "How should I know? She crashed into us when the light was red. It's just unbelievable," my husband replied. "Yeah, it was terrifying. We definitely need to make sure we get compensation from her. And this happened right when I was about to get a promotion," my sister chimed in. If I didn't interrupt, they would just keep complaining, so I decided it was time to tell the truth. "There's something you both need to know," I began. "What is it?" my husband asked. "Firstly, I did have my car inspected before the accident," I revealed. "Did you? Then the dealership should be held accountable. They must have known about the brake oil leak," he responded. "I agree. So right after the accident, the police contacted me. They wanted to determine the cause and asked to check my dashcam footage. But that old dashcam doesn't record audio, and it only starts recording after an accident, so it wouldn't show anything useful," he argued. "I understand your concern. However, you weren't aware that I had recently installed a new dashcam," I disclosed. My sister looked up in surprise. "What?" she exclaimed. As the truth unfolded, my sister's face turned ashen. "I also installed an interior camera," I continued calmly. "Modern dashcams can start recording with even a slight jolt. The police have already reviewed the footage." My husband appeared bewildered, and my sister looked on the verge of collapsing. "You were hiding something, weren't you?" I confronted her directly. I don't understand," she stammered. "You tampered with the car." My husband started to panic. "How can you accuse my sister like that? You're talking to her as if she's your enemy." Suddenly, he fell silent, clearly shaken. I mentioned earlier that even a slight movement would trigger the recording. So many private moments between you two were captured. I was mortified when the police asked if it was my sister who was in the car with me. My husband turned pale. "You've been having an affair all this time. I trusted you completely." Caught in the middle, my husband began to shift blame onto my sister. Mary isn't the only one responsible here. At that moment, the mother of the woman who had crashed into my car arrived at the hospital room. I had invited her to come over. "Don't you have something to say to her?" I asked pointedly. My sister was caught off guard by the presence of the small, tearful woman. "Wait, who's this?" she asked, bewildered. "She's the mother of the woman who crashed into us. She should be taking responsibility for all of this," I clarified. My husband, who had been speaking, fell silent upon seeing the woman's tears. "She's the mother of the woman who crashed into us. Her name is Alice. I added, hearing a woman's name. My husband turned pale, and my sister began to panic. What? Who is she? Do you know the woman who was driving? So they knew it was your car, and she crashed into it? My husband asked, clearly taken aback. Seeing my husband struggling, I decided to explain the situation to my sister. She was having an affair with John. He had promised her a divorce, but he didn't follow through. When Alice claimed she was pregnant with his child, John insisted she get an abortion. After that, he cut off contact with her, and she wanted revenge by hurting me. Wait, so that means my sister began to piece it together. Yes, you were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, I confirmed. I can't believe this has ruined everything, my sister lamented. The truth is, crying or shouting won't change anything now, I said, pouring out my emotions. Now you both understand what happened. You had an affair behind my back, and Mary tried to harm me by tampering with the brake oil in my car. But she ended up in an accident herself. I'm the victim in all of this. I continued, I was willing to work things out and not divorce you if you showed remorse and came clean during your hospital stay. But you never indicated you were sorry. Instead, you treated me horribly. Remember how we drew up our divorce papers shortly after we got married? I never thought we used them, but I filed them today, so we're no longer married. Goodbye. Having said everything I needed to say, I left the dark and quiet hospital feeling a sense of liberation from the resentment that had been bottled up inside me. However, my mother was deeply shocked when she learned the truth. She not only grappled with my sister's infidelity, but also with the responsibility of caring for her physically disabled daughter alone. I ended all ties with John and Mary, but I couldn't abandon my mother to handle everything on her own. I reached out to the woman responsible for the accident, apologized, and arranged compensation for my sister, who was innocently involved. This eased my mother's burden. 2 years have passed since then. I am divorced from John and living independently. My close relationship with him had made our divorce surprising news for my colleagues. Subsequently, I noticed more men approaching me, perhaps because divorced women seemed appealing to them at that time. Despite this, thoughts of my ex-husband lingered, making it hard for me to consider dating again. Instead, I focused on advancing my career by studying for a certification exam and enrolling in an online business school after work. When I was married, I had never imagined pursuing such goals. Unlike my sister, who was dedicated to her career, I had never envied that path. Yet here I was naturally drawn to it. Life, I reflected, is unpredictable. Since then, my ex-husband moved back to his parents' house where he's facing criticism from his relatives for his behavior towards me. His mental state has deteriorated, and there have been reports of violent outbursts causing trouble for those around him. Meanwhile, my sister also returned home but struggled with mental illness, displaying self-centered behavior. My mother, exhausted from everything, used my sister's savings and accident compensation to place her in a care facility. She consulted me beforehand, and I supported her decision. If I hadn't taken action back then, I might have been trapped in a life of servitude to both of them forever. It's something I never foresaw. I passed my certification exam as planned and was transferred to a department where my skills are put to good use. I developed a close relationship with a teacher from my online business school, and soon will be married. He's not just kind to everyone but incredibly caring towards me. When I come home late, he prepares dinner for us, a gesture that brings me immense happiness. As I shared these thoughts with the stars, I hurried home to the partner who awaited me.